r/AskReddit. Redditors who have served in submarines. What is something not many people know about being inside one? Served on a Los Angeles class. There are no windows and only a couple people get to use the periscope, so I sometimes tell people that the longest I went without seeing the sun was 52 days. I'm sure there are others who have gone longer. Any other random anecdotes to share? Life on a submarine interests me. Even the most mundane details are cool. They usually have pretty good movie libraries, often titles that are still in theaters. Maneuvers can be more fun than roller coasters. On the other hand, the existential dread of being in a windowless pressurized metal tube at depth in the middle of BFE nowhere when something adverse happens is unmatched in my experience. Just like prison, hard to come by items like sports scores, candy bars and cigarettes, before they were banned, served as currency. Hot racking is not nearly as bad as it sounds because everyone brings a sack to sleep in, so no linens are ever actually shared. Sturgeon and Ohio class sailor here. On the Sturgeon class boat, we tied a rope-tied athwartship from side to side across the middle. Before diving in at test depth, it drooped a couple of feet. Never noticed how much the boat compressed before that. After months on patrol, your eyes don't focus so well on distant objects after not needing to focus on much beyond 20 feet. For a while after patrol. Whoa, that's wild. Do they have any eye exercises or anything? Not that I'm aware of. It doesn't take long for your eyes to adjust, so just be careful. Served on a Virginia class. The best way I can describe the smell is that of a dirty McDonald's. It's due to the CO2 absorbent. We all go nose blind to it in a few days, but the smell gets into all our clothes real bad. The airflow is actually really good. There are fans that keep everything circulating. 5-minute showers are a thing. The reason is creating potable water is a slow, somewhat noisy process. The other reason is discharging dirty water is also a noisy event. Our only communication with the outside world is through email. There is no internet access. The ship periodically downloads everything then distributes it. Upsetting emails are withheld until the boat comes into port so the sailor can continue to function until it is possible to get a flight home. When the boat is on mission where stealth is mandatory, there might not be any communication at all for over a month. On a Virginia class submarine, a 5-minute shower is turn water on to get wet, turn water off, lather up with soap, turn water on, rinse soap off, turn water off, then squeegee all 4 walls. No one was ever in a rush when the water was off or squeegeeing the walls. Yes, radio screened our emails. So if a family member dies, they don't find out until after the funeral. Depends on which family member. Great Aunt Margaret's passing will probably be given to the sailor. Immediate family members like parents, siblings, or children will withheld until the next port. I served on a Sturgeon class in the early to mid 90s. It's not as claustrophobic as it seems. You just sort of get used to it. It's extremely still, since there's no waves like on the surface, and you're not going very fast at all. It feels like you're standing still most of the time. The food is good at the beginning of a deployment. By the middle, it has descended to 5-year-old cans of 3-bean salad. It is relatively unmilitaristic. We took our job seriously, but they had to remind us not to refer to the officers by their first names. If you're tall, forget about running on the treadmill, unless you want to run bent over and wind up with spinal problems. I'm surprised they even let tall people serve on a sub. 6'2" here and served on a 688 boat. I can confirm I wasn't the tallest guy on board. Our tallest guy could only stand upright back aft in the engine room and in certain places on the con. My dad served on the NR1 in the 90s, super tiny nuclear sub. He said that before they'd deploy they'd go on grocery runs and load up with packs of purple Kool-Aid powder and Doritos and ice cream bars for days. Then they were so bored they'd have competitions to see who could drink enough purple Kool-Aid to turn their it green first. I also heard stories of having to dig a cherry out of a very hairy guy's belly button. Clearly they were busy. A buddy of mine when we were in the Navy would get temporarily deployed to subs for 10-20 days at a time. Before each trip, he'd load up on tiny Monster Energy shots. He said when you're not permanent crew, you need to make friends fast on the boat, and he'd give those away to people. The lack of sunlight makes even small cuts and scrapes take forever to heal. I remember trying to slide while playing softball and getting some road rash on my arm. right before we went out for a few weeks. What was originally just some missing skin turned into a nasty thick scab that just wouldn't go away. I think it's the lack of vitamin D your body produces from sunlight. On my boat, I was guilty of this too. A bunch of us had fresh tattoos and got underway like 3 days later. What was a 1-week heal turned into a month. My uncle helped design the Sea Wolf class submarine, primarily the electronics in the bridge computer systems. He was present during a test run which included a mixture of experienced submariners, other Navy and some civilian contractors. Not long into the test run there was a loud bang and a civilian was found in one of the toilets covered in his own crap. Apparently the toilets on a sub have many valves and this guy reversed the process and blew the contents out of the bowl rather than suck it down. Apparently that's a common problem with the Sea Wolves. One of my instructors told me the crew of the Sea Wolf brought a model of the sub with chocolate fondue shooting out of the top to the sub bowl because they are known for blowing sand tanks inboard so often. Served on a first flight Los Angeles class. It's small, really small. Like I got to tour a ballistic missile sub that my friend from nuke school was on and I was practically getting agoraphobic. Adding to it being small, it's also in some ways bigger than you think. There's all sorts of nooks and crannies in the engine rooms where you wouldn't think people would fit. But between cleaning and trying to find a place to get a nap in you find a lot of interesting spots. One particular spot was tagged by one of our lab techs. And as he was upwards of 6 feet 6 inches and 250 pounds, I still have no idea how he got in there. The engine room is filled with oil smoke. Picture getting a humidifier and putting clean engine oil in it, and you have a good idea of what being on watch back after's like. Put some oil in your coffee as well for the true submarine experience. Submarines don't just have fans for ventilation. They have big AC units in addition for keeping the boat habitable. Something many people definitely don't know is how hot it gets in a tropical climate on a sunny day when some of the AC units are down for maintenance and the remaining ones break. I was on duty that day and had to live sleep on board, and temps were upwards of 130 F. I was literally soaked in my own sweat and we were slightly salting the pitchers of water we were drinking because we were just losing so much from sweating. There are hatches which have hatch doors, one on the hull, and one from the airlock created by the 2 doors to the inside of the ship. These are technically escape hatches, although as any submariner will tell you, they're for senators not sailors, referring to the fact that they're there to make people feel more comfortable and satisfy a legal requirement. But if you sink you're probably just going to die because the majority of the ocean is deeper than feasible to escape from. Anyways, for testing every once in a while the boat dives to test depth, as deep as it's allowed to go, and opens the inner hatch to inspect the outer hatch under pressure that deep. It's safe enough as you could imagine, but seeing the single hatch door separating you from crushing amounts of seawater is a humbling experience and not something I think most people would know about. My dad was an architect engineer for a company that built nuclear submarines and went out on the sea trials several times over his career. Said that the food was pretty good, was one of the only ways to boost morale versus not having exposure to the outside. Being 6 feet 5, he said that in retrospect, he didn't pay enough attention to designing the ships for people his height. My dad's story, he served on the USS Kentucky way back when, and due to some logistics error, all they had to eat was basically beef stroganoff. He's like, it's not that bad, I can live with this. But when you're on a sub, and you're cramped, tempers run wild. They start fighting with the metal knives and forks. So command takes them away and gives them plastic knives and forks. Fighting stops for a bit, but then tempers flare and they fight with the plastic. So command takes them away and have them plastic spoons to eat beef stroganoff with. By this time my dad is sick of this shit. People start fighting again though, and my poor E3 dad wasn't about that life. But command was like, yay, so you guys have to eat with your hands now. It's been around 30 years and he refuses to even smell beef stroganoff. Last time we made it was in 2013, and we were on vacation. He came into the house, looked at us eating the stroganoff, and goes, I'm ordering pizza for me. Good times. I didn't serve, but I tuned the turbine generators on Virginia class subs for the contractor who built them. The color was surprising to me, key lime pie green, everywhere. I guess they did a study to figure out which color was least likely to drive people insane when confined for months in a steel can. Kinda made me wonder what would happen in a bright orange sub. For longer deployments, space is extra tight because of all the provisions you have to take. So, they will stack cans of food in berthing areas and put rubber mats over them. You're walking on cans for weeks at a time. Also, I haven't gone through all the comments, so I'm not sure if it's mentioned anywhere yet. Sometimes a sailor will have to hot rack. One rack, that is, bed or bunk, for 2 sailors. When you're working 12-hour shifts, you can get away with it. I did 2 submarine deployments where I had to hot rack. Both times we would make it work by one of us using a sleeping bag and the other one sleeping under the sheets so we weren't smelling each other's sweat. Good times. A nuclear engineer friend who served 5 years once told me he never will eat coleslaw again. I asked why. He said to imagine 300 or so sailors all sick with food poisoning because of bad coleslaw at the same time in a sub. Enough said. Now imagine 5,000 on a carrier. It happened at least 3 times during the 5 years I was in. Everyone called it the double dragon because you'd have severe diarrhea and vomiting at the same time. I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. Thank you for watching.